هي رئيسة واحدة من أكبر شركات إدارة الأصول عالميا، وصوت مؤثر في فهم التحولات العميقة التي تعيد تشكيل الاقتصاد العالمي. تدير اليوم جيني جونسون 1.7 تريليون دولار من الأصول ضمن محافظ فرانكلين تمبلتون التي أسسها جدها عام 1947. بين توسعها في الخليج وتوجهها نحو تنويع الاستثمار والتزامها بتمكين المرأة، أطرح اليوم على جونسون أسئلة جوهرية حول الثقة والمخاطر وحول البنية التحتية التي يتوجب علينا بناؤها اليوم كي يتدفق التريليون دولار القادم إلى الأسواق العالمية بوعي ومسؤولية. أهلا بكم إلى حلقة جديدة من حديث مع صبا. Jenny, hello. Hello and welcome back to Abu Dhabi.
It's great to be here.
Of course, you're not new to Abu Dhabi. Franklin Templeton has been in the region for 25 years. So tell me, how has your business evolved in the region in the last 25 years?
So it actually all started in Abu Dhabi 25 years ago. And our business has evolved a lot over that period of time. When we started out, we were much more focused on kind of the wealth channel, building relationships with local banks and providing various products for that channel. Now we've evolved to having relationships with institutional clients. We've opened more offices in the GCC and really kind of have grown with the region.
You certainly have, but tell me what gives you this idea? Why do you think the region, of all the regions that you could be investing in, hundreds of them at the moment, you choose to invest so heavily or to bet so heavily on this region?
Well, Franklin Templeton's a global company, so we have clients in over 150 countries, which means, our job is to find investment opportunities anywhere in the globe. And so we actually have to have a presence in a lot of places just to make sure that we're finding those investment opportunities. What I think is so interesting about the region, particularly now where you have a bit of a divergence between, say, US and China, is actually the Middle East is a great bridge on those relationships. And so anytime that happens, you actually can find some investment opportunities. Plus, I think there's we have about $6 billion invested in the region. And, if you I always say that what's so interesting here is there's a real deliberate effort to diversify the economy, which means you need money to invest in that diversification. And so that brings up investment opportunities. So as we're scouring the globe for places to invest, this is an area that's very vibrant.
What does the world not understand yet about this region, or what does the world still get wrong about investing in this region, do you think?
So I think the world thinks of this region as it's oil, right?
Yes.
And what they don't appreciate is that, depending, like you look at Saudi Arabia, almost 50% of the economy now is non-oil based. The Vision 2030 is all about diversifying the economy. And I think actually in the region, you have the Vision 2035, Vision 2040s, and in all cases, there is a very focused, deliberate effort about figuring out how to diversify the economy. I describe it, so I'm third generation at Franklin Templeton. And I always say that there's an advantage to being a public company with a family history and the family still involved, because it enables me to think longer term. I think some of the investments we've made in things like blockchain and AI don't pay off quickly, but have to be done, and it's that kind of family mentality. And what I say when you ask the question about what do people get wrong, I often describe the dealing with the GCC region, I say you have to think of it like a family. That you get this sense by the leaders who feel a responsibility. Oil runs out, say, in 3 generations. What are we investing in today to ensure that future generations have opportunities? And taking those revenues and figuring out how to diversify the economy, that's that family mentality. That's that fiduciary responsibility that you feel, often how I feel about running the company. How am I thinking about leaving it for the next generation? So I think a lot of people get that wrong. They don't understand kind of that nature. I think there's always assumptions around, how are women treated in some economies, and I think that often people get it wrong.
With this also comes risks. Of course, you must be thinking about the risks. So what risks are you implicitly taking on when you're betting so heavily on the region?
Look, I think that again, we invest globally. So we have some clients, often clients want to invest locally first. So if you're living in the region, people tend to want to allocate the majority of their savings within the region. So we create local products, but also, we have global equity products, we have emerging market products, and so we compare these investment opportunities versus others. Number one, as I always tell people, diversify, right? So this is going to be an area of diversification. But two, so, what are the risks? I guess the risks are, and they get less and less so, because in the past, if you were investing in the economy, oil was such a big part of that. As they diversify those economies, you're less tied to oil, and so therefore the individual country's economy is less tied to oil. Tourism has become much more important, which is pretty interesting, and you see the growth in tourism here. I think people get that wrong. Healthcare is interesting, technology is interesting. There's a real focus on those investments. And so to me, those are great opportunities, but you have to compare them versus other opportunities in that same sector.
Yeah. And to that, you actually did recently register 8 actively managed funds in the the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
You signed MOUs with the PIF and with Hassana. So what does Franklin Templeton bring to the partnership with these entities?
Yeah, so today, Franklin Templeton is a $1.7 trillion asset manager. We have about $270 billion in private market assets, of which about $90 billion is private credit. We launched the first ever Sharia private credit fund. I think what we bring, and we've been investing in the region for decades, so we were already doing that, but now having this private markets capability, we can go in as new projects, infrastructure projects and other things are being launched and actually provide the private market in lending capabilities, not just the traditional, say, GCC bond and fixed income. I also think we have tremendous experience in growing economies, and so we're able to bring and kind of look across the globe and say, here's what's working. You want to develop capital markets, let us, we'll provide some feedback on how you can strengthen and deepen your capital markets, which is really, I think, an important, a lot of conversation in the region. And so our ability to bring foreign investment in to help fund new projects is important. And we saw in the case of the KSA, where there is so much passion and strength around the Vision 2030, that just opens up great investment opportunities. I always say to people, here's another thing that I think people get wrong. People just think, you go to the Middle East because you're going to get them to invest their oil money in your products.
Yep.
The reality is, what you get wrong is there's great investment opportunities here too. And but we always feel like you have to be feet on the ground to find those opportunities.
Tell me a little bit more about the opportunities that you see here in the GCC.
So, I think some of the work that's being done in technology is interesting. We're going to be announcing a partnership in the area of blockchain. I think that, so that's one area. There's a lot of interesting things going on in AI here. I know that some of the healthcare development, I've talked to US companies that are looking to set up operations here. You have some major hospitals that are already here in the region. So those are all interesting investment opportunities. We're also interesting, I think it's a surprise to a lot of people, is a big Sharia manager. We have about $5 billion in Sharia and Islamic finance. We were the first to launch a European UCITS product that is Sharia compliant. We have a technology fund that's Sharia compliant. So, our job, I always say, is to provide a broad breadth of investment opportunities that span the risk spectrum so that it aligns with whatever our client's risk profile is, and deliver them in whatever vehicle our clients would like to receive it. And so, we are here, looking at ETFs, traditional UCITS and mutual funds, separately managed accounts, alternative asset classes, and trying to package those, and then obviously invest them locally as well as globally.
As you rightly said, Saudi Arabia is trying to deepen its markets, as are the other countries in this region. But specifically on Saudi Arabia, what do you think? Do you think there are any reforms needed in order to accelerate institutional participation in those markets?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, and I know that they're working on it in the case of their bond portfolios. They need to broaden the depth of their bond market. Right now, it tends to be local banks that are buying it. They're really tight credit spreads. So if you want to move the credits away from the banks, you have to be at a market price. So I think that's really important because banks are the great multiplier of money in any economy. And so you want banks to be able to turn over their balance sheets and be able to turn over their lending capabilities. And so as the banks are buying, say, the government issued debt, you want them to be able to sell it off in the market. Well, it needs to be at market price. So that's one area that is important. I know you've seen actually a lot of IPOs. This is pretty new, and which is exciting, right? So those are really important, and that's where also our job as somebody who has clients all over the world, it is to promote those opportunities of the IPO and make the investments in those IPOs so that you show depth in the market.
So on IPOs, Saudi Arabia probably had the most number of IPOs in 2024, if I remember correctly, something over 40.
I think it was 24 billion or something.
Yes, something over 40 different issues. What does that mean as regards private credit? Are the markets ready to scale, the markets in the region, are they ready to scale private credit? And how does that go when we look at the increase in the number of IPOs? Do the two match?
Yeah, so, I mean, interestingly, my comment, let's take Saudi Arabia, if your bank's balance sheets are filled with a lot of government debt, it's hard. They need to be able to clear that debt to be able to have the capacity to do the lending on new businesses, right? So that middle market businesses or the entrepreneurs that are trying to start businesses, they often need to be able to borrow money for that. Private credit's a great way to do that. Venture capital is a great way to do that. And so, I think that what you see with these companies going IPO is that actually they've already gotten their private credit, and now they've come to the market and they're mature enough that they can attract capital that's willing to invest in the public market equities. So that's really exciting. You want more private equity and private credit to be able to fund really things like the Vision 2030, because you need to be able to have that capital for the startups to be able to grow so that they ultimately can go public. But to go public, you want a company to be pretty self-sustaining by that point. In other words, those kind of early years where you're working through the kinks, you need to have that in the private markets. It's better to be private because your earnings are going to tend to be volatile.
You want to stay in the private markets longer before you go to an IPO.
Or at least till you're healthy enough that you can have sustainable earnings. Look, once you're a public company, quarterly earnings are such a focus. You need to have much more stability. Those early years where there's more volatility in earnings, it's kind of better to be private. And I think that the good news is as you attract more private credit to the market, it will actually automatically generate more IPOs, which will deepen the capital markets there and the exchange.
Are you preparing for that scale up in the region?
Absolutely. I mean, again, we've been here 25 years.
Yeah.
We've been excited about this market for a long time. And often what happens is reforms start, everybody sort of thinks, yeah, sure, we'll see what happens. And then suddenly we call it the hockey stick. You go long here and then suddenly it takes off. And you really feel like we're at that moment, right? There's the right policy, leadership's focus, really a real genuine interest by global investors in the region. All of those things add up to being, a strong economic growth. And you see it in the numbers of the growth in the economies.
Let me ask you a more general question, or more global question, as it were. What will reshape capital flows, do you think, over the next decade? Economics,
well,
geopolitics?
A lot of things. I think a lot of that, all those are factors. I mean, first of all, I always tell people, capital goes where capital's treated well. So where do you find capital treated well? Well, leadership you have transparent rules, they're consistent, you have government policy that's supportive of capital, and so then you say, okay, well, what from a cross-border standpoint, what are important? Geopolitics are important. You know, if you definitely see a divide in technology between the U.S. and China, and I don't know where that, you know, falls out. You're probably, from a technology standpoint, going to invest in both. And in the past, they probably worked together a bit more. Mm. On the other hand, U.S. needs China and China needs the U.S., so they'll always work together. But it'll be in various sectors, and it's going to be important. So I think geopolitics are important. Policy is very important. AI, technology. I mean, there's going to be some amazing breakthroughs. In my 30 plus years in this business, I have never experienced the kind of change to our business as I'm experiencing right now. And I think that goes across the board. Mm. And so those are going to be really important from an investment standpoint. I think so far, take AI, you know, the real investment opportunities have been what I've called the picks and shovels, right? These were the companies that were investing in cloud service providing. They were the energy producers and data centers. It was the NVIDIAs on the chips, the Microsofts on cloud servicing, AWS. That's the picks and shovels. The next step a lot of people talk about will be more of the infrastructure, but the real opportunity will be the companies who get AI right within a sector. And I think it is evolving so quickly that the companies who aren't investing in it appropriately today will be left behind. Yeah. And so you want to make sure that you're following those companies, seeing the advances that they're making. And I think that's going to be a real opportunity.
And maybe AI is probably a piece of the puzzle, but what infrastructure needs to exist for the next $1 trillion to flow? And also to flow more, I would say, with a conscience.
Well, so the infrastructure, I mean, we've all talked about all the data or all the energy and power that's required to support the initiatives on AI. Now, I have to just say that I was talking to somebody about this recently, and you know, anytime you make a 30-year commitment on some technology that exists today, you just wonder what disruption is going to happen down the road. And I have to just tell a quick story. Yeah. I was having this debate with another CEO about, you know, are the data centers overbuilt? Are they underbuilt? Are we going to need so much power? And we literally walked in a meeting. We were actually we were at FII in Saudi Arabia, so we were going to a dinner. And we walked in the room, and the first person we ended up talking to was somebody who was doing quantum computing. Of course. And I said, well, quantum computing, how realistically, how close is quantum computing? And he gave some, I think it was like 10 years or something. And I said, but what about all the energy that's required for quantum computing? And he said, oh, we use photonic silicon, and it doesn't need nearly the energy. Now, I don't know whether photonic silicon is going to matter or not, but I can tell you that there will be breakthroughs that will change whatever we think that energy consumption is required. And then, of course, the other side of this is, you know, the energy transition is so important. I mean, I think we all recognize that, you know, we're living on this earth, and climate change is real, and we want to do as little harm as we can. So we want to be, you know, as responsible as we can into whatever it is to be able to generate that energy that's needed for these technological advances.
That's why I asked to generate the $1 trillion, but to generate it more consciously, you know, with a conscience, with a look to the future and the future generations and what we are leaving them. So how are you using AI? How are you using that in the business? Is it mainly back office? Is it a co-investor with you now?
So we actually have a partnership with Microsoft. There we're building an application that's all about, I tell people it's a simple problem with a difficult technical solution. So the problem is, how do we ensure that our sales and service people are meeting with the right people and having the best conversations? That's kind of everybody's challenge. Sure. When it comes to salespeople. But it is actually a challenging technical solution, because you want to go into your CRM system and review what you're talking to your clients about. You probably want to look at some product information system that's going to evaluate what's the best product to talk about. Maybe you want to look at social media, so you ensure you have some context as you're talking about to that client. And that requires you to pull together a lot of different AI models, both quantitative and large language models. And that's the kind of platform approach. So that's what we're building with Microsoft, and it's in the pilot phase. I think we have 41 users at this point. We're also doing some interesting things on the investment side. Now, the simple things are just summarize an earnings call, right? So give us some more efficiently summarizing an earnings call. It's kind of the grunt work that the research analyst does. But actually what gets really interesting is we're building a kind of a research analyst where that is an AI analyst. And so you feed in your philosophy on investments. You actually have it learn from the investments that you've done and the models that you've done. And then as a portfolio manager is making a decision, it can challenge that portfolio manager. Well, you say you do this, and by the way, you're making this investment, but it's not consistent with what you've done, or it's not consistent with historical returns or whatever. So, we're building that out in the investment side. And then to your point on sort of the back office, there's a lot of efficiencies that we're doing, RFP reports that we're generating, reconciliation, all these things that we're trying to reduce the costs, because as I say in the asset management business, there's only one way fees go, and that's down. So we have to constantly be pushing ourselves to be more efficient.
So AI, of course, will deal with the numbers, will deal with the data. The human beings are still required for intuition. And I want to ask you about your intuition. And when you're looking at some numbers that conflict with intuition, what guides you? What philosophy guides you?
I think when you're looking at numbers that conflict with intuition, you dive deeper. That's what you do, right? Like, there's times, it's funny, in the CEO role, you tend to, obviously, people think you're spending your whole day talking about strategy and meeting with clients and things, but every once in a while there's something that maybe isn't passing the smell test. And you got to dig deep, and you roll up your sleeves and you get into the details until such time as you feel comfortable with the answer, so that you are reconciling the intuition with the data.
And that works?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's helped me so far in my career.
Excellent. So let me ask you a personal question. As you said, you're third generation manager or CEO in this company. What was it like growing up in a family of overachievers?
Well,
and you're one of how many siblings?
One of seven.
One of
I'm
seven
number
siblings.
6 of 7.
Okay.
I actually, when I was pregnant with my 5th and final child, I said to my father, I'm pregnant with my 5th and final child, and without missing a beat, he said, what if your mother and I had stopped at 5?
Exactly.
My mother had 7 children and then went back to medical school and graduated from Stanford Medical School. My father obviously was building Franklin. He really, although his father started it, it was $2.5 million in assets and $10,000 in revenue when he took it over. So he's really the one that built the business. There was never pressure to go in the business. And that was I think that was really something my father encouraged us if we wanted to do it, but only if it was something we desired to do.
So no pressure on you from the family to perform?
Never felt pressure. And the business was small when I was, kind of going through high school and struggling to get through it. Matter of fact, my father took over in 1955. I remember I was in college when we hit the $1 billion asset mark. So that was in probably 1984, something like that. So it shows you how long it takes to really build that early business in the years. But I was one that always wanted to go work in the business. I'm not sure why, but I always thought it would be a great business to be in.
What does it take to build a business, build it up to $1.7 trillion today, and for so many years?
I think the hardest is the first $1 billion, for sure. Yeah. And it took a lot of grit. I mean, I saw my father work incredibly hard, a lot of weekends to build his business. And even today, with clients all over the world, I am traveling probably 3 weeks a month. It would be very hard to do this job if my children were not grown at this point, because there's a real need to be with your clients wherever they are. I'm here in Abu Dhabi at Finance Week, and it's important to show up. This is an important region for us, important clients here, and you feel that same pressure kind of globally.
So let's get philosophical a little bit. If there was a Hippocratic oath for asset management, what would you write in it? How would you write it? Take your time.
You can't totally say do no harm, because do no harm means take no risk. But I think that we have a real responsibility. I feel we talk about this in the firm, like this fiduciary feeling that we are helping people with the most important goals in their lives. So whether it's ensuring they have enough money to retire so they don't lose their home, and that they can live at least comfortably, in their old age, helping their kids go to get an education, or if there's a medical emergency, being able to have enough savings for that. That is a real responsibility. And so therefore ensuring that we are communicating clearly what the investment is and what the risk of that investment is. If you're young, you should take risk in your investments, because you have a lifetime to earn it, and you're going to get higher returns with greater risk. And if you happen to hit the market when it's having a setback, it's okay, because as long as you stay in the market, you'll get through that. And then as people get older, you tailor off that risk. And so to me, I think the most important thing is that we really clearly communicate what the product profile is.
Jenny, what is fundamentally different today about the environment in which we're working from the environment you started investing in so many years ago?
Yeah, so I always say, like, the one thing that hasn't changed is that clients' needs are pretty similar, but our ability to deliver on those have improved dramatically. Technology's enabled much greater personalization. Big distributors are tending to reduce the number of firms they work with and demanding more from those firms. They want broad breadth product capability. They want us to help in education. We have the Franklin Templeton Academy, so we'll do education. Our institute do thought leadership. And then the ability to use technology to personalize people's portfolios is really exciting, actually, because you can align that risk profile much better with individual clients.
Let me ask you about women, a particular segment of investors. Women are coming into a lot of money in the next few years. They currently hold on to a third of global wealth, and that's expected to go up to 50% of global wealth in the next 3 years only. So do they have enough agency over their money, do you think, considering the current system, considering the current regulation laws, what they are offered by way of opportunity and product?
I think that, and one of the reasons that women will inherit so much more money is they tend to outlive their husband, right? And so I think it's really important for women to get comfortable and to get educated around and be involved in the family's finances. And that's not always a traditional role. We actually spend a lot of effort trying to get more women in the industry. It's a personal passion of mine. Actually, in Saudi Arabia, we have a program with Princess Noor University, which I'm incredibly proud of, where it's an all-women's university, and we have an investment certification program. And so these are college seniors who sign up to do this on top of their schoolwork, and it's a 4-month program, and it's a very rigorous investment training program. And then once they graduate, they either become an intern with us, or we've gotten actually 10 other partners, and we're looking for more who want to take these interns in for a period of time to give them experience. And so, the hope there is that you get more women interested in finances, get more confidence in it, and then they'll be fine if they inherit it. Now, oftentimes they say women actually lose interest in math and sciences in their high school years. And so we do programs in different markets directed towards a high school student to try to encourage them to stick into thinking about this industry instead of even getting before they go to college, so that they understand. And I am always reminded, I said to my kids, is anybody going to follow me in this business? And one of my daughters said, no, Mom, I want to do something that helps people. I'm like, this is something that helps people. But that's one of our problems as an industry. We don't do a good job of describing this in such a way that it resonates with people, that this is a great business to be in to help people.
But that's the thing, especially with the next generation now. They feel that finance is very extractive. So how can you convince them otherwise?
Well, as I always say, it takes money to do a lot of the goodwill that you want to do. True. And so that is just the reality. So be part of actually, managing money for good, right? And be part of the system so that you can make the impact.
The two do not contradict, making money and doing good. But the reputation is out there that they do not.
Yeah, well, absolutely, right? Because if you just think about it, that you're doing it for making money, right, versus you're doing it to achieve some good outcome. Look at, you talk to somebody who's afraid that they won't have enough money in their savings to support themselves in retirement. They know they're going to become a burden on their family, or if they don't have family, they're really afraid. And so being part of helping people to achieve those goals is, I think it's really admirable.
Do you think we need to...
Can I add one other part of that? Because I think this is often lost. It's not just helping people for their own personal goals, but the investment of taking those savings to help capital markets so that you're growing. If you think about, investing in medical research, investing in technology, these are all things that are improving people's lives. And so you need the capital to be able to make those kind of investments. And so it's both sides of it. And I don't think we describe it enough. I use this personal story. My son, when he was 10 years old, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. At the time, his life expectancy was reduced by 15 years. That number's down to 7 years. That is down to 7 years because people have put their savings and capital in companies that are doing research and development to improve the lives of people who have type 1 diabetes. So for me, it's very personal. And I don't think we do a good enough job of linking that.
So you think it's a communication problem? Do you think that we need to redesign products or redesign platforms to regain that trust that we are losing?
I don't think it's so much to redesign the platform as much as communicating and educating people on what we actually do and why savings and capital investment is so good and actually improves people's lives.
So looking out to 2050, what will matter most in asset allocation specifically?
In 2050, look, it's funny because it always comes back to the same things. Diversification, you never know. Like, who would have predicted COVID, right? You just never know. Even Russia invading the Ukraine, you don't know what's going to happen, so you have to have a diversified portfolio. That's number one. The second thing is get in the market, get savings, get in the market. The earlier you invest, and this is where I think people underestimate this. If you put, say, $5,000 away a year, and you save for 10 years, from age 20 to 30, you will have more money than the person who starts at age 30 and saves for 30 years at $5,000 a year because of the power of compounding. And so getting in the market young, I think, is probably one of the most important things you could do, and then ensure that you have a diversified portfolio.
Absolutely. So what does that portfolio contain? Alternative investments is something that you have redesigned Franklin Templeton effectively to become a powerhouse of alternative investments.
Yeah, so we're top 10 alternative investments. That's $270 billion of our $1.7 trillion. So still a small number, right, compared to the overall. Look, alternative investments are great, but they are illiquid, so they're not for everybody. But the average person is probably underexposed to the alternative investments. And partly the reason it's important is because companies are waiting so long to go public. And so those early years, those early real growth years are often captured in the private markets, and you don't get it in the public markets. And so building products that are appropriate for the risk of a client. So if you don't have a lot of savings, you might get that private market exposure in a pooled investment vehicle, a mutual fund, a UCITS product that has some allocation there. If you're very, very wealthy, You might do it in a drawdown fund where you can afford to have it locked up for 12 years, because those drawdown funds can be 12 years. So you have a lot of other liquidity as part of your savings. And then there's a whole bunch of different products in between. And so, alternatives are important, but they're definitely not for everybody.
So the risks involved in private credit for an individual investor, what should they be paying attention to if they want to go into?
It's funny, I was talking to somebody about this. Look, if you're managing a fixed income portfolio, like you're a fixed income manager, you're going to always look at the credit spreads and whether you're getting paid for your risk. And sometime investment grade, you'll say the credit spread is too tight, it's not worth that risk. I'll go high yield. Sometimes you'll say high yield, I'm not getting paid for the risk. You can't bucket private credit in just one big category. You have to understand whether you're getting paid for the risks in that category, and you should get an illiquidity premium above the credit spread risk, right? So an equivalent private credit investment grade product to a traditional fixed income product should have probably 150 basis points higher yield on that to compensate for the fact that it's illiquid. Same thing, asset backed. We think real estate debt in the US is a really interesting space because the regional banks were the traditional lenders and they've kind of retreated from the market. So just like you would look at your fixed income portfolio and find the opportunity, you need to do the same in your private credit portfolio.
Great advice. Thank you very much for all that. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions for single sentence answers, if you don't mind, just to wrap up.
Okay.
One sentence that you would whisper to the next generation of capital allocators.
Diversify.
Oh, that's one word, not one sentence. Thank you for that. And one sentence to your board to defend your GCC strategy.
Look at the growth in this region and the opportunity in this region. I brought my board here to show them. They came. We went to Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi to show them how exciting it is. So I don't have to convince them. They're already convinced.
And they said, Jenny, you're a genius.
I don't know if they said that, but...
Okay, final one. Jenny, did you rollerblade in here?
I have not rollerbladed here, but I have sand surfed.
It sounds to me like you're a bit of a daredevil. What other adventures have you been on? Tell me.
Let's see. What do I do? I love horseback riding. I used to be a ski racer. And I did actually last year go skiing in Azerbaijan, which was the first time that I don't think there's a lot of people that have done it in Azerbaijan. That was a lot of fun.
Have you tried skydiving here in Dubai?
I have not. I've done skydiving once. I'm not sure I would do it again.
Oh.
I am going to New Zealand on vacation. I'm debating on whether I should do bungee jumping or not.
That really scares me. I don't know. Somehow with the parachute I feel safer, but the bungee jumping...
Yeah, I don't know. The skydiving was pretty scary. So.
Okay, if you do it, let me know.
I will.
Keep me posted.
I will.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure.